Hello and welcome to the Music Business Buddy with me, Johnny Amos, podcasting out of Birmingham in England. I'm the author of the book, The Music Business for Music Creators. I'm a music producer, a consultant, an artist manager, and a senior lecturer in both music business and music creation. Wherever you are, whatever you do, consider yourself welcome to this podcast and to a part of the community around it. I'm here to try and educate and inspire music creators from anywhere in the world in their quest to achieving their goals by gaining a greater understanding of the business of music. Okay, so in this week's episode, I am joined by session musician Colette Williams. Now, Colette is a fine example of a music industry professional, fine example of a human being, and actually somebody that I've been trying to get on the podcast for quite a while. She's a busy lady, right? But she's here. I've finally interviewed her, and that is what this week's episode focuses on. Now, a little bit about Colette. So she's a session musician. She's a drummer, right? And she's been doing it for a while. She's very experienced. She's performed for some of the biggest artists and biggest labels in the world. She was also a part of Ruse. For anybody that's familiar with Ruse were a duo, a very, very, very cool duo that were the first act ever signed to Marshall Records. So the Ruse kind of saw Colette touring all over the world, right? China, USA, all around Europe. She's been on the stage at Glastonbury. She's played with all sorts of different people. If there's anybody out there that's a fan of the indie band Blossoms, you'll know Colette, right? Because she's often seen on stage with Blossoms, playing guitar, playing keys, playing percussion. She'll tell you all about that story. I'll also be asking her about, her journey into what she's now become and what that started like, for how she went from like being a student into kind of like getting work and becoming a professional, what that path looked like as well. It's all in this week's interview, and I'm going to play it now. Colette, welcome to the Music Business Buddy.
Hello.
It's good to have you here. How are you?
I am very well, thank you. It is a privilege and an honour to be here with your wonderful self. How are you?
Oh, thank you, Colette. Oh, very well, thank you. And you and I have known each other for a few years, right? And so I know more than a thing or two about your career. And for ages now, I've always thought, I've interviewed you before, Colette, right? But, not on this podcast, but,
Yeah, you have.
elsewhere, right? And I've always thought, God, Colette would be such a great guest on the podcast. And so, you were in a room near me the other day and I said, Colette, how would you feel about coming on the podcast? And thankfully you said yes, and here we are.
Absolutely. So, it was one of those carpe diem moments, wasn't it?
It was. And I'm thrilled. So thank you for joining me. So Colette, there's a lot of different subjects. I've tried to kind of think about some of the things that, some of the many things that you do, right? But it kind of makes sense to start with your work, as a session drummer, right? Because you are known to many people in the music industry as a drummer, and you work with some of the world's biggest artists and labels. May I ask you about what TV session work is like compared to kind of live session work, life on the road?
Absolutely. So one of the most recent things that I was lucky enough to do last year was Later with Jules Holland. And that was working with a band called Blossoms. And for me, that had been pretty much number one on my bucket list of sort of career opportunities and goals and things I wanted to achieve. So when I heard that was coming in, I was absolutely over the moon. I'd grown up watching the show. I'd found a lot of really inspiring bands and artists along the way on that show in the Hootenanny. So it really did have quite a big place in my kind of musical upbringing. So when I found out we were doing that, I was absolutely right in the middle of super fearful because it was such a huge opportunity and over the moon excited. So when it came to the filming for it, I had so many different emotions flowing because I was actually quite unwell at the time. I had a virus, like a bad cold or something that I just hadn't managed to shift. And whenever you've got a performance of that type, there's something in your mind that just kind of elevates the pressure of it, I think. So I had that kind of added pressure of like, I have to do a good job here. I'm amongst all of these incredible artists and bands who I've looked up to for years. And I just can't drop the ball. So that was kind of going on in my head at the time. And sometimes when you do TV performances, they're mimed or like pre-records. This was completely and utterly live, as you would expect it to be, for Jules Holland caliber. So I remember kind of setting up in the round, in this kind of beautiful space, and seeing some of the other artists that were on the show, Roger Taylor being one of them. And I just had one of those moments of like, how is this my life? Just gobsmacked. And in that instance, you actually get to watch all of the performances being recorded and taking place. And then, it comes your turn. And I just watched these incredible artists and felt really inspired in that moment. So I think it really helped, because by the time they got around, to me, I was like, wow, this is such a privilege. Let's kind of show them what we've got. So the performance itself was just really exhilarating. And I remember looking up to the balcony space where they had a live audience as well while we were filming. And Roger Taylor had done his part, his song, and actually gone and sat in the audience on the balcony to watch the remainder of the performances. And I remember sort of midway through my part just looking up and being like, oh my gosh, Roger Taylor is just sat up there watching us. And it was just out of this world.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was every part as wonderful as I hoped and expected it would be. So that will be a memory that stays with me, I think, forever. I feel like that, that's something you tick off the list, and it was kind of like, right, I could die happy after this moment now.
Actually, that's really interesting, because that is like a perfect hybrid of both, right? TV session work and live playing, because as you know far more than me, that sometimes TV session work can be like stunt work, right? Where you kind of have to play along with a record, and that's part of the art form. And that's not in any way to belittle it, because if anything, you've got to play it absolutely perfect, even if it's not being played, especially for a drummer though, right? I mean, that must be, you can't put anything wrong with that.
Yeah. And weirdly, sometimes I find those scenarios harder because, like you say, you're almost playing a character or like a role in that moment that isn't really the job that you usually do. And I have done some TV work before where it was mime work. So exactly as you say, playing along to the track, and the vocals were live, whereas the instrumentation was pre-recorded. And I'm going to give all the way away the magic of TV now, but on a drum kit, the hi-hats are literally glued together. So, that they are really dead, so that when you hit them, they don't really transmit any audible sound, which is the strangest thing because they don't feel or respond in the way that you used to. So everything's kind of like dead and just absorbs the hits. So you have to almost change the physicality of how you play and how you move around the kit, which is quite jarring, especially when you haven't had the chance to practice that. So the first few bits of TV work that I did, that it was quite jarring. And I remember thinking in that moment, right, you've really got to perform and almost act like a drummer, even though you're trying to adopt this character of like, okay, what would it look like if I was pretending that I was a drummer? And yeah, it's like a whole different ball game. And in that moment, you realize that there's less pressure on how you sound, but perhaps more pressure on how you look in that moment and in that part. So for me, it leads me to really think and view the performance in a different way, because I'm thinking about how I look, how I move around the kit, maybe even slightly overemphasizing emotions and reactions in that moment and what my face is doing, and maybe over-egging some of the hits.
Wow.
And yeah, it's just like a completely different ball game, but really enjoyable at the same time, but for different reasons.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah, absolutely. Well, you're a rock star. You can pull it off, Colette. It's fine. Do you know? It's funny you mentioned Jules Holland before. Obviously I'm wrong about this, right? But I thought you played Jules Holland with Shakespeare's sister.
That was the Graham Norton show.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So,
So I was
so I
wrong.
did.
I was right that I was wrong.
Yeah, right act, wrong show. Yeah,
Wow,
yeah,
that's
yeah. That was the
cool.
Graham
Wow.
Norton show.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a really fun performance as well. And again, because it was an act that had sort of come back, um, and had sort of evolved, I guess, over the years, and were maybe more of like a heritage act now. Um, it was strange for me because I remember that song vividly because of the music video.
Yeah.
And I remember it being quite scary actually from when I was a child and thinking, wow, this video is it's quite scary, it's quite dark. But the song itself is really impactful. So when I got the call to go and do that show with them, it was like, oh wow, that's like really exciting. And when I told my mum about it, she was like, "No way!" And it's kind of one of those opportunities where you tell your family and they're like, "Oh yeah, I loved them," and they're excited on your behalf for you because they know what it means and they've got that like context.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so yeah, that was really incredible. And again, because they were doing live vocals, the vocals were just as good as I remembered them, in that video on the track. And
Really?
and you're kind of sitting there playing and thinking, right, I should be focused on the drums, but you're like, whoa, that note. And then you're like, oh, I'm doing a job here, back to it. So you have to kind of
Wow.
not get distracted in that moment just by the incredible performances.
God, that's interesting. Okay, yeah. Yeah, I suppose as well with TV, you've got so many cameras around you. You know that there's going to be stuff where they're shooting you personally the whole time, and you know that they're going to pan to you when there's like, I don't know, a drum fill or when there's this moment or that moment or whatever.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a whole other art form, isn't it?
Yeah.
You mentioned Blossoms earlier. I'd love to ask you about your work with Blossoms because you're going to be known to a lot of the fans of indie band Blossoms, right? They'll be like, "Oh, that's Colette. Wow, cool. Okay." So your role with Blossoms has been pretty varied, right? Could you tell us a little bit about how that relationship started and then what it kind of evolved into?
Yeah. So for me, this is kind of a prime example of why networking is important in the music industry. Um, I was in another band at the time, and I was playing at the Great Escape, and a friend of mine had come along and introduced me to a friend of theirs who happened to be the tour manager for Blossoms. So we got chatting, and I was um, I was coming up to a period where I was quite free. I can't remember if it was over a summer, and I remember their tour manager briefly mentioning that they'd be on the lookout for a drum tech for Joe, the drummer from Blossoms, and had asked if I might be free and if I would be interested. And at the time, I'd done a little bit of drum teching for friends and a couple of other acts. Um, and it's something that I kind of fell into, really. I've always been quite a big drum nerd when it comes to gear and equipment. So it's something that has always interested me. And I think the way I would explain it as well is it's like having an opportunity to get involved, really understand the nuts and bolts of another band or artist without maybe having the opportunity to play for them. um, or maybe even working with an artist of another genre that you don't play, and being able to see all the intricacies and being able to help them with their equipment. Um, so, so yeah, I was aware of Blossoms. I knew their music very well, and yeah, when they said, this opportunity's coming up, I was like, that sounds really exciting, and I think it would be really fun. So that's how it came about. And some of my first shows with them were festival shows, Reading and Leeds.
Wow.
So, pretty big shows, quite high pressure for me, jumping in, working with a band that I hadn't worked with before, with equipment that I hadn't worked with before with them. So it was really an um, a case of getting familiar with the drum kit that he was playing, with triggers, any kind of sort of playback systems as well, and then being sort of thrust into the show to look after and support this drummer. And it was really fun. Everyone was super welcoming, a real kind of family network with Blossoms. So I felt straight away at home with everyone, and they were really helpful. So if there was things that I didn't yet know, or I was like, oh, how does this usually go? Everyone was really friendly and quick to kind of provide me with answers and support. So straight from day one, it just felt like a really lovely place to be.
Yeah.
So yeah, I did that festival season with them as Joe's drum tech, and quite quickly they mentioned they were looking to expand the live show and bring on another session musician, and specifically what they wanted covered was percussion and backing vocals. And we'd had a few conversations at this point. They knew I was a drummer too, and I sang. And they asked if I would be interested in kind of shifting roles, which, I was absolutely over the moon with, because predominantly I do see myself as a player first.
Yeah.
The rest of it's just kind of like a cherry on the cake. So yeah, I was absolutely over the moon. And I then switched roles and I started playing percussion and doing backing vocals for the live shows. Initially, I was still looking after Joe as well. So it was kind of like, one eye on the play and one eye on, is everything okay over there? Is your drum kit all good? Do you need a new skin on there? And which, as you can imagine, quite quickly, the logistics of that get quite difficult unless you're like a human octopus. So I was looking after Joe for a little while, and then we had like a bit of a rotation where we had another drum tech come on board to sort of fully take that place. But another great thing about Blossoms and all of their crew is there are so many multi-talented individuals there who can jump on different instruments. If something goes wrong or if someone's ill, it's like, don't worry, I got guitar duties, I know the parts for that. And like a lot of backline techs do, you become very familiar with your instrumentalist that you're looking after, the parts they play, the way they approach it. And you are kind of like their shadow in a way. So that was really useful. And that's how I kind of stepped into playing with them down that pathway.
Wow. Okay. So you go from, reliable, brilliant drum tech into, can you play? Yes, you can. Can you sing? Yes, you can. But I'm just thinking, for the benefit of those that might be listening to this going, yeah, but we've seen you playing guitar for them as well. Like what happened after that? Because you're around people in the band that are like, multi-instrumentalists and, extremely accomplished at what they can all do, as you say, individually as well as collectively. But then you step into the role of playing other stuff for them as well. Is that right?
Yeah. So that was actually born out of musical direction, really, because Blossoms are really creative and explorative when it comes to what should be on the recordings and the albums. And I'd actually had a little bit of time off on maternity leave in between their albums. And when I came back to work with them, they'd just written and completed a new album. And there was less percussion parts or less call for there to be live percussion, really. So they'd layered a lot more acoustic guitar parts and more keys on the latest album. So they asked me if I would be comfortable maybe switching instruments and doing more on the guitar and keys side live. At the time, I'd dabbled in these instruments, but I wouldn't say I played them, not competently. So it kind of struck fear into my heart at that point, because I was like, oh my gosh, I don't really know these instruments well. And I don't know if it would be right of me to say, yeah, sure, I'll give it a crack. And equally, I was like, oh, but I don't want to lose my job or my place with them.
No.
Because, the nature of being a session musician, you're not formally part of the band, you are sort of those extra services. And really, my job is to provide musically what the band needs. And if that means that my part on my instrument isn't required anymore, then that's how it goes. So I did really, really want to stay working with them. So I was trying to walk this fine line of being authentic and honest about my skill set, but still having that opportunity. And I just said, look, I'm going to be really straight with you. they're not really two instruments that I'm massively competent with. But if you are willing to support me with learning those parts, and kind of help me through, then I'm more than willing to do that and sort of switch roles. And they were like, yeah, absolutely. You know, we're not expecting you to be a virtuoso. A lot of the parts were kind of chordal support, as I said, acoustic guitar. And they were like, we can absolutely kind of, you know, show you the direction we want or give you support with that, which I was really, really happy about.
That's nice.
So I spent a lot of time perfecting the parts, getting more comfortable with the instruments. And my first show back with them was actually at Gunnersbury Park, supporting Tom Grennan. So no pressure.
Oh.
I think it was about 50,000 people, so it was a mind-blowing amount of people. And it was one of those moments where you're like, I've got two options here. I either crash and burn in front of a lot of people, or I go up there and smash this.
Yeah.
And there's only really one option, isn't there? So I can remember that vividly, standing on stage and feeling really out of my comfort zone because I was stood with an instrument that I don't usually play. I'm usually behind this huge monstrosity of percussion and quite hidden, which I love. And I was there quite stark with this guitar thinking, okay, here we go. So yeah, it was a real leap of faith for all parts and everyone involved. And I'd hope and like to say that, you know, I did a good enough job. I mean, I'm still here. So so it was really wonderful that they had that faith and trust in me. And vice versa, that I knew that they kind of, you know, believed in my skills really. So yeah, it was a really wonderful opportunity. So I do currently play guitar and keys for them, backing vocals, a little bit of percussion still comes in from time to time. But yeah, it's a bit like a musical revolving door, ultimately.
Wow. Okay. So if we see you, you know, later this year or next year on stage with Blossoms playing saxophone,
Yeah,
you know, with cymbals
I'm
between your
miming.
knees, then then we'll know why. We're like, she's done
Yeah.
it again.
Yeah.
There's no end
I'm going
to
for the full
this.
sweep. Yeah. The full orchestra.
I tell you what, though, Colette, good for you, though, because you know, you were in a spot there, right, where you could have gone, you know what, that's just a little bit beyond where I want to be here, or you know, I suggest you work with somebody else, and I'm sure that they would have thought nothing less of you, right? But it speaks
Yeah.
volumes about you that you didn't, and that you embraced that, and now it's a
Thank
part of
you.
your portfolio forever. You know, good for
Yeah,
you.
it was one of those catalyst moments for me where, you know, it's two instruments that I've really always wanted to have a reason to be better at. And sometimes you just need to flip the accountability, because sometimes having that accountability with yourself and just saying, oh, you know, I want to learn that instrument isn't enough. When there's a deadline and someone else asking something of you, it's like, right, okay, I need to do this because, you know, there's an end point to this. And I think for me, that was what I needed.
Yeah.
And that just flipped my thinking into, right, you know, let's stop kind of prattling about and sort of dabbling in these instruments at home and actually learn them. So, you know, I'm really grateful for that opportunity.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And actually you alluded to this slightly earlier when you mentioned about your maternity leave, but you've also got a 2-year-old little boy that's watching you, right? And learning from you. What, you know, just for the benefit of those that kind of, you know, I wonder this at times, like what is it like to be like a kind of, you know, a professional musician, working mum, and balancing that with work and family life? What's that like for you, Colette?
I'm really grateful you asked that question, because to me, this is a real defining point in my career. And I know that sounds strange to say because, you know, it's a personal achievement and accolade. But the reason that I kind of throw that in with the career trajectory as well is, I think it's something that's not discussed enough when it comes to musicians and numerous different positions within the music industry, because often the lifestyle is difficult to navigate alongside being a parent, and I think that's the real truth of it. Um, and personally, that's what I saw when I was thinking about having a family. Um, I remember trying to look for role models in a live capacity, whether that was someone pregnant on stage still performing, whether that was, looking in the sidelines in the wings and thinking, oh, their children have come to watch them or their families here. And I think I found that quite difficult to find people really visibly flying that flag, especially people that I could relate to in my position, whether that was a woman on stage, a performer. And I think for a long time, I remember thinking, how will I know what that could look like if I can't see anyone around me doing it? And I really did try to seek out people and have discussions quite openly of, how do you find it being a parent in the music industry, and what does a typical week look like for you? Because I really think some of that confidence and strength to know that you can do something like that comes from hearing about other people's experiences. So when I found out I was pregnant, it was really important to me to try and be a little bit of that beacon, maybe to other people who had toyed with the idea of having a family and thought maybe it's not possible because I don't see anyone doing it. And I was due to go on a small run of shows with Blossoms at the time when I would have been 7 months pregnant. And in my head, I was like, this is a real opportunity for me to stand up there and be like, look, here I am, I'm pregnant, I'm performing, this is completely
Wow.
possible.
Powerful.
And hopefully, kind of spread that message on. So I was really grateful for the opportunity to do that. I remember the talks with the Blossoms team. They were over the moon when they found out. They were super supportive. And the first question was, how can we support you and what do you need to be able to do these
Oh,
shows
wow.
and this tour?
Really? That's nice.
And it was really funny because my answer was, I don't know. It's like, I've never been pregnant before. And honestly, I don't know how this looks or how this goes or what we need to put in place.
Right.
And I think it was very much the same for them because they'd never had anyone in their camp before who was pregnant. So we kind of worked together to navigate some of the logistics of touring, whether that was transport from venue to venue, whether that was, things from a health and safety perspective. And anyway, we embarked on these dates. I think it was 3. The first of which was at Coventry Empire. So I was 7 months pregnant, and I remember earlier that day before the show having to go shopping for a pair of black maternity trousers that I could wear on stage. Because I was like, I haven't got any trousers that fit me. I'm not going to stand up there in like a pair of stretchy joggers, So I was like, right, I need to go and find some trousers. So I was in Coventry, going around the shops, bagged myself a pair of trousers. And I was still on percussion and backing vocal duties at this point. So started the show playing bongos, conga, a little bit of everything, triggers, and the shows are quite high energy. We're all kind of bopping around and you sort of dance as you're going through. And my waters actually broke during the show. And it was one of those moments where I was kind of like, I don't know what's happening at the moment, but I'm 7 months pregnant and that's very early. So yeah, it was completely surreal. And I got through the show, and when I went home, I then went to the hospital, and they were like, "Yeah, your waters are broken." So it kind of flipped then from the, "Oh my gosh, I might not actually get to fly this flag, and this might not go how I've kind of planned it and how I've expected it to." And there was supposed to be 2 more shows that week, which I didn't make because I did end up going into labour early.
Wow.
So my little boy was born 9 weeks early. So it was completely unexpected, a massive shock at the time. And I did for a long time feel a real disappointment of not being able to get through those subsequent shows. And it weighed heavy for quite a while because I felt like I'd sort of let someone down, people that I didn't even know, these people that I was hoping to inspire. And it was a strange feeling for a while, having the absolute elation of luckily our son arriving safely and being okay. But with, the plans and the things that I kind of had in mind for how I hoped it would have gone. So yeah, it was a really strange time, and I've had quite a lot of conversations with colleagues and other musicians in bands who have since actually reached out to me to say, how was your experience? Or I know that, you've had a little boy and you're a session player. So what does that look like for you? And I think that was like a full circle moment where I realized that I didn't have to be out there visibly playing those shows um, to spread that message, talking about it, and even just, I guess, building that network and people knowing that I have a little boy now was enough to spark those conversations. So that makes me feel really, really happy and grateful that even if I'm the tiniest catalyst for a conversation about it, or for someone to come to me and ask some advice, like, that is absolutely incredible. So
Wow.
so yeah, I think it's a real privilege to be in that position.
Yeah, that's wow, that's powerful stuff right there, Colette. You know what I mean? Like on many, many levels as well. In fact, I'm just thinking of everything there. You know, like even the idea of like other women, whether they're in music industry or any industry for that matter, and just kind of watching you and going, "Whoa, she looks pretty pregnant and she's
Yeah.
up there and she's doing this," and regardless of like, I mean, what an amazing story, in your son's life forever, by the way, as well.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I
He's got
always
the
say,
ultimate icebreaker there, hasn't he?
yeah, yeah. And I mean, no shade on Coventry whatsoever, but sometimes I do wish it was a slightly more exotic venue and place for that story. It's forever going to be Coventry Empire. So, big up
Wow.
Coventry.
Oh, well, Coventry's got a special place in your life for the rest of your life now.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's in the book now. Yeah.
um, Colette, I'd love to ask you about your time in Ruse, because, you were a very, very, very active duo, right? You were the first act ever signed to Marshall Records. And that was an era that saw you like touring relentlessly and playing major festivals, and that must have been a pretty cool time in your career as well. How did that band grow so quickly from like nothing to like where you got? Because it seemed like quite a short space of time, or have I got that wrong?
Yeah, yeah. I often ask myself the same question, to be honest, because it was quite a whirlwind experience. Um so there was just the two of us in the band, a duo, me and another girl from Northern Ireland, actually. And we'd met in London. I was living there at the time and working there. And we'd met and had a few jams. And there was a real like musical chemistry. And we quickly became very close friends as well. It was one of those encounters where you just think, yeah, I really enjoy this person's company. We're on a level here. We could do something really exciting together. So it had all of those kind of makings. And we started gigging in London. We did a few shows in London, and we were actually picked up by a manager at one of our first shows, which I look back on now, and at
Wow.
the time, it's one of those encounters where you think, nah, this is too good to be true. This is a fluke here. What's in it for us, or what's in it for you? Um, but no, we were just lucky enough to be found by an Irish manager as well, who had come to the show and said that he'd just seen something quite magical about our live show. Um, and I think one of the big things was, at that moment, there were not many duos doing the genre and style of music that we were, and trying to kind of pull that off in a live capacity. Um, we were often coined as the female royal blood just because there was two of us and we were playing a similar genre of music. So it's quite an easy comparison to make
Mm.
there. But yeah, I think at that time there were a lot of traditional 4 or 5 piece bands playing alternative rock, sort of garage, 90s garage, throwbacks to that kind of style. But I think it was maybe still quite unique to see two women on stage playing drums and guitar for a heavier genre. And I think that was where the magic was, really. So yeah, we were quickly picked up, and we had this wonderful manager who really believed in us and our capabilities. He believed in a real trajectory for us in the music industry. And he worked tirelessly to help us build connections. He brought on a booker that were called Midnight Mango, based over near sort of Glastonbury way. And they started booking our shows. And we just found ourselves with a real jam-packed touring schedule quite quickly. And I think the reason that things elevated so fast is we were just always on the road. We were always performing. We were always networking. After every show that we played, we would literally hop off stage and run to the merch desk and man the merch desk ourselves, which often resulted in, the whole audience looking that way at the stage and then looking that way to come and chat to us.
That's good.
And we absolutely loved it. It was a real organic time in our lives where we were still grassroots enough to be able to go and man our own merch desks. And I think that was what kind of catapulted us. It was the fact that we were having these conversations with our fan base. We had, the time to talk to them and actually make connections with them, which I think sometimes is not always possible these days, whether it's budget restraints, whether it's a security perspective, there's lots of different reasons. And I think that was a real magical moment for us in building a genuine and connected fan base. And I think when you have a genuine fan base, that is when things organically happen for you.
Yeah.
If people believe in you and they feel a connection, and they feel the passion from your music, then they will buy your merch, they will buy tickets to your shows. And we were just lucky enough to forge that relationship early on, I think. From that moment, we then had US management come on board. We had a record label, Marshall Records. We were published. So that snowball was kind of rolling fast at that point, and just carrying us with it, really, for the ride.
That's amazing. Wow. Well, what a learning curve when all
Yeah.
that kind of, it's the little things in life sometimes. Like, what you said there about the idea of kind of like going on stage and then going, right, we're done here. And, when you finished a set and you're really tired and you just want to kind of just go and be quiet somewhere, but no, you're out on the merch. That speaks volumes, that does, because like anything, a lot of people are investing their time when they come to see you, and they're investing in you as much as the music in some ways. I really admire you for doing that.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
Honestly,
it's good,
it was amazing for us because it's not often you get to be on ground level hearing what your fans are actually saying about you.
Yeah, it's important.
Sometimes, it's via the record label. Oh, you're great and you're this and that. And that's wonderful. And obviously now it's online maybe, but there's something magical about that face-to-face connection and what people say in that moment. I think there's a lot of authenticity there that you sometimes don't get and aren't privy to. So yeah, it was a real magical time.
Good for you. Good for you. An hour later, that heat's gone as well. There's the magic 15 minutes when you first come off, isn't there? Where
yes, yeah.
people really
Well,
want
I think
to talk to
it
you.
must be the like the serotonin and all those kind of bits just to play, and the adrenaline, and yeah.
That's amazing. Wow, it's really nice to hear about that era of your life. What was the early kind of part of your career like, Colette? Can you talk us through your sort of student, like you from student to professional? Like, what did that look like for you?
Yeah. So I studied music at Leeds University. So I did a degree in popular and world music, specialising in drum kit and percussion. And then I moved down south after that. So I kind of gravitated towards London. I got a job at a music university there, and I was actually in the admissions team. So I wasn't playing or teaching, but I kind of saw it as a bit of an in towards the music industry. Even though it wasn't the music industry, it was more music education. I think I was just intrigued as to where that pathway might lead me, because I didn't really have a musical network outside of my fellow students that I'd studied with at that point. And I needed like a starting point and a launch pad. So I thought, this is a good as opportunity as ever. Let's go and work for this music uni, work in admissions. I was still very passionate about music education, recently graduating. And it was a nice place for me to start off. So I moved towards London, and I just started asking around, where musicians were going, what kind of gigs were on, and started to try and branch out a little bit and just go places, take things in. I went to a few jam nights. And at the time I was quite overwhelmed and quite introverted. So I didn't necessarily have the confidence to just go to a jam night and get up and play. So I'd sit in the audience, I'd try and soak it all in, and then think, right, next time maybe I'll get up and play. Now I've kind of got a grasp on what's going on and what kind of people are here, what kind of styles are being played. And I just slowly sort of came out of my comfort zone and found friends, and I'd go again and be like, oh, I saw you last time, nice to meet you. And yeah, things just kind of snowballed from there. So I built up a few connections. And through the grapevine, I heard about auditions that were taking place. So I'd sign up for auditions that I was kind of relevant for. I did a few bits for up-and-coming artists. I did some auditions for well-known artists. And then record labels and, different opportunities. And each time it was really scary because I never really knew what to expect. And I knew that there would be a real high caliber of other musicians there. So you always know that you kind of have to present on your A game. And I think some of the first auditions I did, I definitely didn't know what to expect. And I was like, whoa, I'm kind of in over my head here. And I just learned something and took something away from every opportunity and kept trying to kind of go up the ladder until something stuck. And out of that, I did some session work. I did some of the TV shows that we talked about. And I think it was just a case of getting my face out there, and then people would be like, oh, she did that last time, or she worked with that act. And then I'd get a call to work with another artist on that roster. And yeah, it was just quite organic. And I just kind of kept chipping away until, I found the place I wanted to be.
Yeah.
And being in London led me to Ruse as well. So all that was going on at the same time.
Of course. Yeah.
And it was quite an eclectic mix, really. If I always say, if you look at my CV, it's like a jack of all trades. There's bits of everything all over the place. And I actually heard Ray's drummer, Matt Brooks, talking about something just today where he was kind of explaining that in between the playing for artists and the incredible opportunities and the real impressive things on the CV, for a lot of people, there are these other bits that are maybe a little bit obscure, and that might be working behind the bar in a venue. It might be doing a little bit of admin work, or something that's kind of music related but not playing. And that is really it kind of rings true for me, because in between those opportunities I was doing things like that. I was working at universities for a while. I did some extra work on Hollyoaks. I did all these little bits for like agencies, and just to kind of earn the money to pay the bills that then allowed me to have the time to go for these opportunities. So yeah, my career has been really eclectic. And still, today I teach at BIM, as you know.
Yeah.
And that's what I call sort of like the bread and butter work in between these musical bits, the bits that allows me to pay the bills, hopefully, impart some kind of wisdom.
You certainly do that. The students absolutely love you. Everyone does there. So
thanks, Johnny. Likewise, yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, it's just a mixed bag.
Well, that was a very important part, of your decision there to kind of, when you finish at Leeds and go, right, I'm done with my studying for the time being, right? That aspect of things, and let me go to London and set all the things that you set up when you went there. That's what kind of led you on to all the things that then happened next, you know. So that was a it was a bold move, but it was a very important one. I'm glad that you did it because it enabled you to, you know, move up the ladder, so to speak,
Yeah.
didn't it? You know.
Yeah, there's a lot of right time, right place there, I think, for me, and crime of opportunity.
Yeah, yeah. No, that makes sense. But at the same time, you know, you've right place, right time, yes, but you've still got to put yourself there and make it happen. And
Yeah.
you did that, you know. So well done you. Colette,
Thank you.
last question for you. So Colette, if you were to spend 15 minutes with the 18-year-old Colette, you know, quick cup of tea together, you went, right, what would you tell her?
Um, so I think my advice would be just to enjoy the journey more, um, because I've definitely been guilty of thinking like 10 steps ahead. I'm the kind of person that is producing the song before I've written the song.
Right.
Um,
Okay.
so I think as I've got older, I've realized that I'm a chronic overthinker. Um, and I need to be more present sometimes in, the actual journey and the process of things and just take it in. Um, because I think it's really easy to fixate on doing a good job and what the end product might look like. And before you know it, the actual experience has gone. Um, so I think that would be my advice. I mean, there's a plethora of different things that I could advise myself at 18. Don't get that haircut. Definitely don't dye it that color, Colette. What were you thinking? Time and time again. But yeah, I think when it comes to career, I think it would just be enjoy the process,
Yeah.
and stop like sweating the small stuff. The
Right.
amount of gigs where I have fixated on things that really, in the grand scheme of things, do not matter at all. And then look back afterwards and being like, wow, why did I, waste that time focusing on that thing? So yeah, I just have a word with myself and be like, you know what? It's all going to be okay, kid.
That's so sweet. I love that. That's really, really, really nice. There's a lot to be said for just living in the moment, right? You
Yeah,
know,
definitely.
actually, you know, I'd say out of all of the people, all the music professionals I know, I'd say you're really good at it, actually, Colette. You know, like, I mean, talk about being present in the moment, right? You know, not everybody can say that their water's broke on
Yeah.
stage, right?
Yeah.
At the Coventry Empire. If that's not living in the moment, then tell me what is.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely. Yeah. Rock and roll.
Colette, you're an inspiration. I really mean it. You know,
Thank you, mate.
to many, many, many people, myself included. Colette, you're an absolutely fine example of a music industry professional. You really are.
Can I just say then, while we're on air, you are very much someone I look up to when it comes to the music industry, and as an educator, the amount of information that I think if there's something to be known about the music business that you don't know, it is not worth knowing. So, I just want to say thank you as well for being such an inspiration. It's been a privilege.
Oh, bless you. Cheers, Colette. Oh, well, that's a good place to end it then. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thanks, Colette.
Thank you.
Okay, brilliant. Oh, what a wonderful lady. It was really nice to talk to Colette about what she does and how she's got there and everything in between, right? There's a lot of complexities to this, isn't there? And I'm incredibly mindful that everybody's journey into becoming a professional musician, it can look pretty different, right? There's kind of no right or wrong way of doing it, which is one of the many things that makes it so incredibly complex at times, because there's not like a solid pathway into here's how it's done. And one of the things I like to do here on this show is to be able to shine a light on different people and understand their pathways into what they've done and what they're doing, so that it can inspire and educate others to be able to go, hey, that sounds like something that I might be interested in doing. And it's really interesting to see that that person did it this way. Colette was a brilliant example of that. I hope you enjoyed what she had to say. She's a fun lady to talk to. She's very, very, very inspiring. I hope you took a lot from listening or watching what she was all about today. Okay, that's enough from me today. I'll be back same time next week. And may the force be with you.